Hey everybody, Gisele Grenier here. In this video lesson, we're going to get down and dirty and we're going to make a mess. I'm going to be taking a page out of one of my experimental journals and just has a map collaged on it, and I'm going to tear some paper, paint that. Then I'm going to stencil using heavy gel medium, stencil something and then wipe back. And it's going to be, I'm playing with transparent layers. But there's a problem with the project. The paint that I want to use is no longer made, so I'm going to show you some alternatives. Let's go down to the table. So I've got my experimental journal here, and this is the actual page I'm going to be using. It's just a map of where? A map of North Bay? Yeah, it's somewhere up there. Yeah, it's right up there. And I'm going to be gessoing this to kind of set everything back. Then I'm going to put a layer of alizarin crimson on here. So problem number one. So the alizarin crimson, it's not made in Decor Art Media Fluid Acrylics, which is what I love to use when creating projects like this. You can make it by taking quinacridone burnt orange, quinacridone magenta, and phthalo green yellow, and you can make something that, or you can use Decor Art Traditions, already has it. Do not use pure alizarin crimson because it'll fade quickly. So use something that says permanent alizarin crimson or alizarin crimson hue, which the manufacturers create their own. They have their own formula to create something that matches it as close as possible. And the Traditions one is by far my favorite. So put that aside. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some paper and I'm going to use the Vintage Silhouette. And there's a particular section in the paper. I think this is the paper that belongs with it. Yeah, I think so. This is the decoupage paper. You can use dictionary paper as well. I'm going to use this one here, but I want to tear it, and that'll go onto the page here. I'm going to paint that. This is now the transparent red iron oxide, which is no longer made by Decor Art in the fluid acrylic line. I still have some, so I'm going to use it. I could also then turn around and use the Traditions one. But, I can get my phone, I wrote a blog post when I have no idea on color mixing alternatives to transparent red iron oxide and yellow iron oxide. So I did a video on how to mix up a color that's close to that. You can't match it exactly because transparent red iron oxide is a single pigment, so you can never color match to a single pigment because it's as pure as it gets. But you can get something close. We're looking for something that's almost like a burnt sienna that has a bit more red in it. That's transparent. Now burnt sienna is more opaque. And then we're going to use transparent yellow iron oxide, and you can use either one. So I'm going to stick with the fluid acrylics. There. So once that piece is dry, I'm telling you how to do the project all at once, and I'm going to take the stencil and I'm going to stencil the gel medium, the heavy gel medium, and stencil first, then paint, then wipe it back, stuff like that. All right, so let's take some gesso to this, and I'm going to get my number 8 Bristle Bright, and I'm using the thick gesso. So for those of you that are watching for the first time, when I'm referring to my gesso, I'll say thick gesso, gesso as is, or my thin gesso. I've taken this gesso, and I did a video on this as well. I have 3 containers of that. One left as is. The other one, I opened the cap to let the moisture evaporate a little bit, which thickens up the gesso. And the other one, I added a little bit of distilled water to thin the gesso down. And you can do that on the fly if you want, but I wanted everything prepared ahead of time so I didn't waste my time. In case I added too much moisture during filming, then what do? Wait. All right, so I'm applying this dry so I can get that nice texture in here. If you add too much, that's why I like using, this is the thick one. If you use gesso that's too thin, you're not going to get those nice scratchy lines with the texture. And this dries very quickly using it dry. all I'm doing is I'm setting the map into the background, leaving some of those lines visible. Now, if you want to, if you've applied too much gesso, just take a baby wipe and wipe it back before it has time to dry and cure. And put that in the water. All right, so that's that. And that one was I used the Decor Media gesso, the white gesso, the heavier one. So this one I let the water evaporate just a little bit. You can use whatever you have. So now what we're going to do is we're going to paint this with the transparent red iron oxide and a transparent yellow iron oxide. No, we're not. We're doing alizarin crimson. Sorry. Sorry. All right. So if you want to make your own, so you can take quinacridone magenta into fluid acrylics and add almost an equal part of quinacridone burnt orange, and that's going to get you a really, really deep, basically a reddish color. And then what you're going to do with that, you're going to add a little bit of phthalo green yellow in small increments, and the phthalo green is going to be on the opposite of the color wheel to these, so it's going to neutralize it and make it very dark, but just add a little bit because this is super powerful. Okay, and my blog, I have that done as well. So with this one, I could have used the same brush actually. Let me just get my hair blower and dry this. When you use a hair blower, you got to make sure that you don't have any embellishments that are small, because the air force goes, psh, blows everything. All right, palette paper. And I probably shouldn't have worn the sweater because I'm going to probably get paint all over it. Look how beautiful that is. You don't need a lot, even that's too much. I wonder if I should knock that back a little bit. That's a little dark. Well, let's see what happens. So you can see I'm just going, oh, almost got my spreader there. I'm just dry brushing, and what I'm getting is I'm getting all the texture from the gesso. And I'm just realizing I probably should have transparent red iron oxide as the base, but that's okay. You can also do this with a baby wipe to apply. And then darken the edges a little bit more. But just make sure you're applying this dry. Otherwise, it's just going to fill up all the crevices. So you don't need a lot with this paint. The Traditions paint is so high in pigment. And in here, you really don't need to do this because the paper is going to be covering it, but might as well use it, and all that can go back in the bottle. All right, so if I reach, my goodness. Cannot make these containers. It's either the containers are yucky or the baby wipes are yucky. So you can just wipe this back a little bit. Now, as you wipe back, you're going to be picking that up. If you just keep going over the same spot, all you're doing is spreading it around. That's fine if that's what you want to do. But always go to a clean spot and then pull back. And if you want to get a lot off, you just let it sit for a little bit longer, and all the moisture will actually go into the paper and dissolve the paint, and then you'll be able to pull off a little bit more. The gesso acts as a resist, so it makes the removal a little bit easier. Just keep in mind that once the paint is dried, it's harder to remove. So just something to add a little bit of color. Now, if you wanted to actually add the paint to that, using a baby wipe. So I can take the baby wipe with the paint, but look how much goes on there. Now it's transparent, so it's really nice. But as you do this, look, you fade that out, turn it around, turn it around. Look at that beautiful vignette. Actually, that looks pretty nice, doesn't it? Let's just keep going. Let's just keep going. How many of you out there start off with an intention of what you want to create, and then the piece kind of guides you into a different direction? Every single time. Every single time. I don't want a perfect circle there. See, there you go. Now, if I were just to dip this back in and go back on here, this is still wet, so I may lose a lot of this nice texture. Dry it first, and then apply another layer. And then that way you'll still have all of this, because this is still wet. So like if I just do this, now all I'm doing is I'm lifting it up. See? So make sure you let it dry, which I'll do that now. And just go in again. Circle, 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 using the same baby wipe. Turn it over just to remove a little bit. Back over. Nope, I haven't got any of my clothes yet. There we go. That's really pretty. I'm gonna leave that. Let's keep that rough. Yeah. And you can do this any way you want. There's no rule. If you want to make it solid, make it solid. I like that. All right. I'm going to let that dry. And in the meantime, I'm going to put the paint back in the bottle. I wouldn't recommend this unless you've done it a lot of. The problem is that you can contaminate your paint. And you don't want to do that, because then it's just wasting money. But that's good to go. All right, so I'm going to get this out of the way, because this is just an accident waiting to happen. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to take that paper. I mean, it's got some beautiful sections here, and I would love to use a combination. The stencil I'm going to be using is the Americana Decor stencil from Decor called Bees and Birds. And this one here, I'm thinking to go down. I think would be fitting with the map. A tall one would have been better. And that's actually quite pretty as well. Yeah, it doesn't fit. So we'll use this one. And now we just have to choose how we want to do this. That text is a little bit big. I really like this. I like this scripty stuff. It's a little big. I like this scripty stuff, but it's not big enough. So I think what I'm going to do is I will do it like that. How about that? So I'm going to take a pencil, if I could find one. Ooh. And I'm just going to make a mark. Here, here. And this stencil will go past the paper. I'm just going to tear. Now, if I tear up this way, I'm going to have a clean edge on what I'm going to be collaging down. If I tear it this way, then I'm going to have an edge that's exposed. So I'm going to do it like this. And try not to make it straight up. Okay. I am going to go to the very bottom. This takes a little bit of planning, not a lot. And let's tear that. And let's go right to here. Where's my, oh, my pencil mark's not far enough. Let's make it in the lower third, right there. So we're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of text, I think. Right there. Have to pull this way. And you can use these for something else. That's no problem at all. And we'll just leave that like that. Let's just see what this looks like. It's going to go off the paper. That's fine. Or you can just stop it right there. Actually, that sounds like a better idea. Let's stop it right there. And these stencils are perfect for this because they are so thick. There we go. Where's that paper edge? Right there. That's actually kind of cool too, isn't it? I wonder if I can get 2 projects in this one. Do I have another page I can use? Ooh, look at that. This is where the book of backgrounds comes in. You can use your book of backgrounds for all this. I like that, how it's half off there. That's another idea. So now when we collage this, you have 2 choices. You can collage it now and then paint it, or paint it and collage it. The problem with collaging first is that if you get some of the matte medium on the paper, when we do the white back, you're actually not going to be able to, you'll have these blank spots because the medium is going to act as a resist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the work on this first, then collage it, and then do the other stuff. So let's move this aside. And let's bring this over here. Too much mess. So I know that that's going to be where my page is going to end. So we're going to put the gel medium on first. And where's the stencil? How far are we going to go? Right there. We're going to put the gel medium on first. And I'm using the DecoArt Media the heavy gel medium gloss. And I'm going to use the long palette knife. And if you use ones that are, use whatever you want, but if you use ones that have the points, you have to be careful that it doesn't get caught in the stencil. I'm going to put this right on the paper. Find your spot. Right there. And tape it down if your hand is unsteady. Nice and thick. Now I did a video using something called texture glass. Was it called texture glass? It was a DecoArt product. Oh, I absolutely loved it, and they stopped making it. This is the next best thing. Nice and thick. Now, if you're using, let's say, tissue paper, reinforce it on something else because it will warp. That's just by nature. That's what's going to happen. All right. You notice it didn't get all fancy schmancy and, you know, try to get it even coverage. I wanted some of that texture. So this is where you have to be really, really careful. What we're going to do is we're going to lift the stencil up so it doesn't slide. Now, lifting up from here, there is more of a chance of it sliding because I have all this extra stuff to worry about. So I'm going to take this. Taping down the paper will help prevent that. There we go. So I'm going to put that over there, and then I'm just going to take all this extra stuff and put it back in the bottle. All right, so now guess what we have to do? We have to wait for it to dry. We have all that drying time. And that's going to take a day to dry. So I will see you when we get back. All right, so it's all dried now. So just to summarize what we did, so I just took a journal page that had a map, and I used alizarin crimson and just applied a dry brush over the map. So the map now, I set everything back with a little bit of gesso, but if your piece is already light, like they did a book of backgrounds already light, just put the alizarin crimson. It could be any color, to be honest, as long as it's transparent. So this now, I was going to paint this first and then put it on, but I'm going to put it on first. I'm going to collage it on first. I'm going to use matte medium, and the reason being is that this, when it gets wet, is gets a little loose, so I don't want to ruin it. So I'm going to put matte medium over everything. You can see it went right through. Isn't that nice? That's really pretty. Matte medium over the whole piece. And then we're going to put matte medium on the actual text paper. And then put matte medium again on this. And what's going to happen when we put it down, we'll be able to position it into the right spot. You can use decoupage medium for this as well. You can also wet your paper a little bit to get it, to kind of relax it, to relax the fibers. Make sure you go in all different directions, especially if your base is quite textured. I'll have to work fast. And I want to grab more of this text at the top because I like how small it is. Right about here. And I'm going to take it, I'm going to fold it around. So what's going to happen now, because I'm folding it around, when the paper starts to dry, it's going to contract a bit. It's going to be nice and tight. You can put wax paper in between if you want. Try not to wipe up the matte medium on the actual background paper. See? Nice and flat, no wrinkles. But if you get wrinkles, it's no big deal. Now we can let this dry and then paint it, but I'm going to paint it right now. So what I'm going to do is I took a baby wipe or a kitchen wipe and I squeezed it in a paper towel to get rid of all the excess. I just want it damp. And I'm going to grab some transparent yellow iron oxide, just a little bit, and some transparent red iron oxide. My last bottle. So sad they're not making this anymore. And let's go with, oh, what should we use? I can use a brush like that. Let's use just dome brushes. You can use bristle, that's fine. So I'm going to work the bird last. I'm going to take transparent yellow iron oxide and I'm going to just go around the center and then just wipe up the excess paint. And remember, this side here is not treated, when you go over it like this and then you wipe it, the actual paint's going to come off the gel medium and just stick to the paper. Forgot to push that flat. Now, if you want to be able to wipe out some of the paint, coat this with maybe, take a mixture of the matte medium and gloss medium to get like a satin medium and put that there so it'll be wipeable. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of water with the transparent red iron oxide because this is really powerful. And start right up here. Just using circle strokes and just going past the paper line, because what it's doing is it's going into where that paper was torn and getting a little bit darker. Then going towards the center until it fades out. You don't need a lot. Then when I go over the bird, just wipe it up. This is why I like it when this is unsealed, because if I were to do this by wiping the bird up, I would wipe up all the paint as well. And doing it this way, I don't. It sticks into the paper. And you can add as many layers of paint as you want. I'm just doing this nice and slow to build it up. I'm going to go with a little bit more yellow behind the bird. See how bright that is? It doesn't look bright on the monitor. It looks actually kind of dull. And I'm going to be done with that one. So now I'm going to grab a little bit more paint, less water. Just go around the edges and just slightly go in. And there's some parts here that are brightened up with very little paint. I'm going to leave those like that. You just don't want like a halo style. You want it to be, you know, a little irregular. But see how it's dark around the edges? And I pulled out just enough paint. I can even take some of this and just go around the edges here. Make that a little bit of a vignette. Knock down some of that crimson. Totally up to you. All right. Wipe up the birdie. There we go. Not too shabby. So what's happening is that now we put that on top, the crimson is actually showing through the paper here, and now we have a beautiful little pink tinged bird. And that's it. So you can see that you can take this and you can make it into a large size canvas. You can actually put, you know, some text here, a wording of something, you know, a sentiment, free like a bird, something not so cliche though. I can't think of anything, but you can put a sentiment there. But so this is kind of like a nice little prototype for something on a much larger scale. And from here, all I would do is I would just seal it, and I could seal it with the matte medium, or I could seal it with varnish, whatever. I wouldn't use a gloss varnish because it'll be the same finish. I like the idea of the matte and gloss, so I would just go with the Duraclear Ultra Matte, which would be really nice, or the Soft Touch. Decor, it's got the media, there's a soft touch varnish. I couldn't think of the name of it. My mind is going with something like some of these things. But anyway, so that's it. So hope this gave you some ideas of what you can do. Very, very simple. You can use any stencil with this. So I'd like to challenge you to create a piece. So you're going to take whatever you can find. Cardboard, it doesn't matter. Okay? Don't get hung up on the perfect thing because you'll never get it done. And so just take, let's say, a 5x7 piece, you know, depending on the size of your stencil. Any stencil, just reach in, grab a stencil and use that. And if you don't have matte medium, use gloss varnish. Use something glossy to stencil through to a piece of paper. Don't have text paper, dictionary, magazine, it doesn't matter. So do that using supplies you already have in house, and then click on the link in the description below for the community. Unless you're watching this in the community, then you're already there. And post a picture of what you created, and let's see all these different ideas that people came up with. Alrighty, so hope you enjoyed this, and until I see you in the next lesson, stay inspired.